Saturday night how good Spence really is, and it's a fascinating matchup. And kudos to both fighters for taking on that challenge.
Yeah, what does a win do for Spence? What does a win do for Porter? As a promoter yourself, how would you move forward with the win with either fighter?
Well, I think with Spence, you have if he does what he did in the Garcia fight, he cannot be denied. Even I think his harshest critics would have to say Errol Spence is today pound for pound the best fighter in the world, because there is no other fighter in the sport right now who has these kind of names back to back on his resume. So I think a win over Sean Porter just cements Spence's reputation as pound for pound the best fighter. Of course, a win for Sean Porter is a game changer. Suddenly, Sean Porter will be the man at 147, and all the doors will be open. And there are so many doors, so many fights which can be had. It's a loaded division. It's exciting to be a fight fan, and it's exciting for these guys to be welterweights. And the good news is these guys all want to fight each other. You don't hear one saying, "No, I don't want to fight this guy," or "I don't want to fight that guy." And the good news is as well that 90%, 95% of all welterweights that matter are under the PBC umbrella. So it's very easy to get these fights done. You see as well on how quickly they are becoming household names. You see the numbers Fox is delivering for the shoulder programming, and that's more than any other platforms combined. Almost 800,000 people watching the All Access show on Fox. I mean, it's just unbelievable. You look at these numbers and the commitment Fox has put behind. So very happy for these fighters, and I expect huge turnout. In fact, Staples Center is virtually sold out for Saturday night, and that's always a good sign on how the pay-per-view will do. I expect huge numbers on the pay-per-view, and I'm very happy for Spence. And as I said, we are in a new era. It's the Errol Spence area, but we have with Sean Porter somebody who has something to say about that as well. And I'm sure you will.
We're in the new era, but it looks like Manny Pacquiao still the ultimate prize here for both fighters. That's the fight they both want, the winner. What do you make of Manny Pacquiao being here? The reward for the winner, Manny Pacquiao still fighting at that level to where young guys in their prime like Spence and Porter want to fight Manny Pacquiao because he'll make a great fight and he's a good fighter.
Well, he's a legend, and these young guys want to fight the legend and want to beat the legend. We've seen that. It's like an old story in boxing. You always see that. You see the young upcoming guys wanting to fight the legends, the guys they've watched growing up. And they want to, like we saw it with Oscar when he fought Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. We've seen it with Bernard Hopkins when you had a young guy back then, Kelly Pavlik, undefeated, coming up, wanting to fight the legend, and guess what? The legend won. So sometimes, the legend turns back the clock, and that makes it that exciting. I think what we've seen in the last Pacquiao fight, we've seen the legend turning back the clock. I mean, let's face it, that was one of the best Pacquiao performances I have seen. So I think that Manny Pacquiao, even at this point, at this stage in his career, is still very, very competitive with any one of these fighters.
Yeah, and I want to drift off too much from the PBC subject, but you brought it up, Oscar De La Hoya. If you're keeping your ears to what's going on with him and his promotion, Canelo, the Wrangler situation, can you just comment on, as a promoter, how to deal with those kind of situations? How would you go about it?
Well, I think he solved his issues with Ryan Garcia. I don't really know what the issues are with Canelo, so I don't really. It has been so many years ago, so it's in my back view mirror, and I wish him the best. In boxing, it's like you have your ups and you have your downs, and that's just the nature of the sport. But it's not just in boxing; it's in any sport and in any business you are involved in. Frankly, in any walk of life, you have your ups and you have your downs. You have your good days and you have your bad days. And I think Oscar had some bad days, and again, I have absolutely nothing negative to say about it.
Yeah. Speaking of bad days, it looks like Showtime could be facing some bad days. How do you feel about Showtime heading into the future, and then passing up on the Wilder Ortiz rematch pay-per-view?
Well, I think Showtime has been a stable for boxing. They are very passionate about the sport. I think they've televised so many great fights over such a long period of time. So just as I said before, you get some and you lose some, They didn't for whatever reason they didn't get or didn't want this fight. I don't know what the case is, but be it as it is, I'm sure there will be other great fights on Showtime. There's so many great fights which are happening right now. I mean, I've never seen in the last 20 years the volume of fights we're seeing almost every weekend, and good fights, you know. So I'm sure there's going to be some great fights for Showtime as well. Steven is an experienced guy, and I'm sure they're going to be just well. A boxing business, a boxing franchise, a boxing platform, a boxing network doesn't depend on one fight or one fighter. It really is like the sport, and if you're committed to the sport and you do a good job, I'm sure they'll be okay.
Great fight, Inoue versus Donito Donaire. Just talk to us about that. I know you've been, you're the one that's responsible.
Yeah, you know, I mean, look, his nickname, Inouye's nickname is the Monster, but I've got some news for you. You know who the real monster is? The real monster at 118 pounds is Nonito Donaire. So it's going to be monster against monster, and let's see who will be the biggest monster that night in Japan. I mean, Donaire is fired up, he's training hard. That's the fight he wanted from the very beginning. That's what he told me when he entered the tournament. He's happy it comes to it because he's seen flaws in Inouye's arsenal and style, which he tends to fully exploit. And so I think it's going to be one of those nights where you can't blink. Honestly, whoever lands first is going to win that fight because we know both are big punches. And at 118, I said it since day one when Nonito Donaire entered that tournament. At 118, Nonito Donaire is the man to beat.
Richard, let me ask you a question. Let's just say Errol Spence wins this fight. He wins this fight by knockout. Do you still think he needs Crawford on his resume to be legitimized as the number one pound for pound? Where does Crawford fit in the equation of welterweights?
You know what I said at the last Spence fight against Mikey Garcia. And, you know, Mikey's a friend of mine. I think Mikey is and still is pound for pound in most people's top 10. So he is one of the most talented and most skillful fighters. But what we saw that night at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium was something which I have really only seen in my lifetime as a boxing fan and promoter once. And that is a fighter, Errol Spence, making another fighter, another great fighter, make ordinary. And who comes to mind who fights the best out there and made them look ordinary? Floyd Mayweather. That's the kind of performance I saw that night at Dallas Cowboys Stadium. That's why at the post-fight press conference, I proclaimed that that wasn't just the fight, but it was the coronation. It was the coronation in Dallas of Errol Spence as pound for pound the best fighter in the world. Now, this is a test. And this is a real test because I know Sean Porter and I know how difficult of a style Sean Porter is, how determined he is, how good he is. And he is going to come. He's going to come to fight, and he's going to give the biggest test in Errol Spence's career. And we are going to see on Saturday night: will Errol Spence pass that test, or is Sean Porter too much?
Being saying that, this is Big Rich with Hustle Boss. Do you think Mikey should go down in weight and stay and stop fighting at a higher weight? Or
Well, look, I
what
mean,
advice would you give?